it has the characteristics of a disease. Number one, it's primary. It can be first and foremost on the diagnosis list and causes a whole host of other problems secondary to that primary disease of addiction. Number two, it's progressive. It gets worse over time. Number three, it's chronic. You got it for life, right? Number four, it's fatal. This stuff will kill you. There's no question about that.
Hi, my name is Jared Lanpher. I'm the National Director of Strategic Partnerships with Regard Recovery. This is my friend, Dr. Brian Wind.
And I'm Chief Clinical Officer for Regard Recovery.
Today we're going to talk about, is addiction a disease?
Yeah, this is a hot topic, even still decades into what has really kind of come to the forefront of topics related to addiction treatment, the disease model, as they call it. I think addiction is a disease. I think most of the thought leaders in the addiction treatment industry think it's a disease. The reason I think it's a disease is because it has the characteristics of a disease. Number one, it's primary. It can be first and foremost on the diagnosis list and causes a whole host of other problems secondary to that primary disease of addiction. Number two, it's progressive. It gets worse over time. Number three, it's chronic. You got it for life, right? Number four, it's fatal. This stuff will kill you, and there's no question about that. I think it has a couple of other characteristics. Number one, it's one of the very few diseases of which I'm aware that has a component of denial. The disease tells you you don't have it, which is really tricky. So it can be kind of cunning in that regard. The other characteristic it has, thank goodness, is that it's treatable, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you and I do for a living.
Yeah, I know. It's some things that I've heard before is like it's a disease of the brain, you know? And working in the treatment industry for a really long time, I've ran a lot of groups, you know, and like helping like individuals think about that. I've always asked those like, hey, did anybody like whenever they're young, they're like, one day I want to grow up to be a heroin addict and find myself in a treatment center. Yeah. They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, just like no one ever woke up and said, hey, I think I want to be type 1 diabetic and have to manage that for the rest of my life. And I was like, can we see how those things have things in how much in common they actually are? You know, and the treatable thing is like very important to me, you know, being in recovery, recognizing that and figuring out, so this isn't who I am. I don't have to be this way for the rest of my life. Like I can live a fulfilling life. And like today I have that, and that's cool. And that's like one of the greatest things ever.
Yeah, I think one of the things that trips people up most often about this disease concept is that it's really a disease of choice. It requires a behavioral activation of the disease, that behavioral activation being using alcohol or other mood-altering substances, right? So someone who has alcohol use disorder has to make that right turn into the liquor store or convenience store, buy the substance, and then imbibe the substance, right, in order for the disease to be active. Yeah. If they don't, it's not, right? And that's the tricky part for people. But the American Society of Addiction Medicine, to get scientific about it, really classifies this as a brain disease now that really has a lot to do with rewards and those types of things in the brain system. It involves dopamine, the pleasure neurotransmitter in the brain, and those types of things. And for us as human beings, when something feels better or even feels different sometimes, we go back for more, right? Yeah. It's the animalistic instinct, and that's really where I think it becomes a little bit of an abstract concept for a lot of people to consider this a disease.
I mean, just to think about it, like you said, brain disease. And so like the dopamine levels and everything in our head tells us we have to have this. We have to have this to survive. And so like those basic needs of like food and water go out the window. And it's like me personally in my recovery, I've really like prioritized drugs over food, over gas in my car to make it to work and everything to be able to get those. And yeah, like I had to make the phone call to say, hey, do you have this for me that I can have, you know, and agreed on the price and then get to that destination. But, you know, I'm a firm believer in like the choice is in the first one. And then, you know, after, you know, if I have the disease and the disease is taken over.
Yeah. I'll be open about the fact too, you know, I'm a recovering alcoholic and, you know, the disease concept was a tough one for me. I was a guy who could do episodic binge type drinking, you know, going for days at a time without drinking alcohol. white knuckling it, as we say, in our world. And then some kind of compulsion would hit me to go get alcohol, use alcohol, and the outcome was completely unpredictable for me.
Yeah.
Didn't know if it would be a days-long binge or hours-long. Didn't know what the consequences would be. I suffered from blackouts, functional in terms of what other people could see. It looked like I was functioning fine, maybe, of course impaired, but no recollection whatsoever, complete amnesia for periods of time and sometimes days at a time when I was using alcohol. It was hard for me to wrap my head around the disease concept because I felt like it was just a behavior that I was doing to myself. It was a moral failing, I was just inadequate as a human being, and there was something wrong with me. When in reality, I had developed a disease over time, going back and getting the reinforcement of feeling better or feeling different by using alcohol.
Yeah, you touched on like that moral failing, man, that hit home. I figured this is who I am. This is how it's always going to be. It is what it is. To me, like finding out the disease was kind of like a relief, because all those things all those beliefs that I had about myself, like I have an answer for it now. It's like I'm not the POS I thought myself to be. And when I look at it today, like I have a life, like the best life ever, and it'd be like simple things, just being a father, being a husband, being able to be present in all my like affairs. Like those are like the real good things that I have about in life today. And 8 years ago, like the Jared that was like believing in all these moral failings and like this is who I am, being in this 8x8 jail cell, having to share a room with somebody as I use the bathroom, like all those things are like, that's just who I am. And it's like, it's the furthest from who Jared is today, man. And that's the real like nuts and bolts of this recovery thing. And like, I'm really grateful that it's a disease,
Yeah, you and me both. And I have loved probably more than anything in my working life, watching you go through that process for 8 years.
Man, don't do that.
from day one, when I think some people know our story that I saw you in an orange jumpsuit in one of those circumstances, which I had been in myself and shared with you in that moment. To what things are today, I bet you would probably say if someone told you what kind of promises might come true for you just 8 short years down the line, you probably would have sold yourself short on what that would have looked like, right?
No, absolutely. And I think that's a big reason for like my continued success in like wanting to help so many people. Started from you like strolling on in the room that I didn't even know existed within the jail to say like, hey, I'm going to help you, and be like, okay, we'll see. I never lost belief, but I was about as hopeless as I think I could have been in that moment. But I did get a little shimmer of that hope, and I would definitely have cut myself short to what I have today. Honestly, like what I'm able to do and how I'm able to help people, and just be able to like use this like time to like increase the odds of helping as many people as possible. Like sign me up, man, and but I never would have thought this was possible.
Yeah, thank God it's a curable disease, right?
like we said,
we're both sitting here as a result of that.
So we can end up being a microphone for other people. It's like, hey man, like anything is possible.
Yeah.
If these two guys can get it together, you can too.
Yeah, man. It's the greatest joy in my life getting to do this.
Absolutely.
For a living day to day.